Pakistan will be a superpower soon with the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal. But it needs, if she says, why aren't you looking at me? Why should I? I'm not proposing, am I?
70 Pearls of Prayer brings together 70 authentic du'as from the Quran and Sunnah. Download it for free. Link in the description and pinned in the comments.
Muhammad from the US.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum assalam.
So, if you're looking to get married theoretically, and you're in a marriage meeting and you're establishing compatibility, and one point of contention is that she is studying in the medical field and she wants to work in an environment in the medical field. I understand that there's prohibitions surrounding an-nisa working in a mixed environment. However, I was wondering if there was any concessions of specific fields that they could work in, and if so, what are those?
First of all, a woman, the default is a woman should stay home, take care of her husband and children. Now, if she does this perfectly, and the husband is perfectly fine with her going out to work, then the work environment should be totally segregated, as in the case of female schools or institutions and the likes, where she does not have to encounter non-mahram men or free mix with them. Now, the medical field in Muslim countries is quite conservative, and a lot of the women can work in such an environment where there would not be as much as free mixing or exposing their bodies to non-mahrams. In the States, Europe, and elsewhere, the regulations may differ. So they may force them not to wear the hijab or the abaya. They force them to expose their arms and maybe their necks and chest when they scrub and wash for surgeries, and they have to keep it exposed. This is a no-go, 100%. They may be forced to stay late shifts or do rotations, and there would be a lot of free mixing, shared rooms where there will be seclusion with the opposite gender doctors or nurses or whatever. And all of this, a real man, a Muslim man, would not accept this. So if this is being an obstacle in getting married, she's not the last woman on earth. Arham from the US.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
I just had a quick question. How should a Muslim man properly interact with non-mahram women in the workplace while lowering his gaze? I want to maintain proper Islamic boundaries and be professional and avoid coming across as rude or disrespectful. What is the correct balance, Sheikh?
I don't care about what they think, whether I'm rude or disrespectful, because I'm not. If their boundaries say that I have to kiss them and hug them and look them in the face and flirt with them or comment and praise how they look or the fragrance they're wearing, some would consider this to be sexual harassment. So my Islamic etiquette is to lower the gaze, to do the job as requested. A colleague comes to me with a paper, okay, we have to do this, we have to do that. I don't have to look her in the eyes and the face and smile and socialize. I say, okay, yeah, I'll do that, inshallah. I'll present it in a couple of hours, hopefully. I hope this is good with you. If she says, why aren't you looking at me? Why should I? I'm not proposing, am I? You want to pose? Go ahead and do that in a magazine. I don't have to look at you. I know who's speaking to me. You're asking me a question professionally, I'm answering you. Of course, you don't have to be that aggressive. Then people would call you rude. But again, don't pay attention to what people say. Do your thing and move on. I'm doing my job, and this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm communicating. I finished my work assigned to me. I reciprocated. That doesn't mean we have to go for a cup of coffee or share a sandwich at the lunch hour. Wasim from France.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu.
So in my masjid, the imam, he extends a lot, Allahu Akbar, he say Allahu Akbar. So some people, they do the movement before he finishes, and others wait he finishes. So I want to know what is the correct order. Should we wait that he finishes? Allahu Akbar before doing the movement.
The hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib, may Allah be pleased with him, in Sahih al-Imam Muslim, stated that after rising from ruku', none of us would bend his back until the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ touches the ground. So even if he says Allahu Akbar and they see the Prophet is moving and had not placed his forehead on the ground, they would not bend their backs. The moment he places his forehead on the ground, they start to move, which means that a follower does not begin to move until his imam reaches the place where he's going to, whether it's ruku' or rising from the ruku' or going, if you can see him. If you can't, which is 90% or 95% of the people in the masjid, they should not move until the imam finishes Akbar. Then this is when they move, and Allah knows best. Abdullah from Canada.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Raise your voice, please, Abdullah. Alaikum salam to Allah.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear, Akhi.
Okay, so I'm originally from Pakistan. I moved to Canada a while back, and I understand it's not permissible for me to get a Canadian citizenship. But I was just wondering, like for example, if I have children and they're born in Canada, they're automatically eligible for citizenship. Is it permissible for me to get them the Canadian passport and use it?
I know a lot of Muslims, without naming their countries, who their children were born in the States or in Canada, and they were automatically given the citizenship. These children went into altercation with their parents as soon as they reached the age of puberty or 18, wanting to go back, maybe to a country that they've never set foot in. They were just born there because they don't like their Muslim country. They don't like how conservative they are. They want free, as any teenager who's a nutcase, just wants to be free, wants to involve in haram, not be accountable, do whatever he thinks. This is what he sees in the movies. This is what he listens to in the music. So the parents are suffering big time. If you have the ability, no, block it. Say we don't want it. Be proud of your Muslim heritage, your Muslim nationality. Pakistan is a Muslim country, and Pakistanis should be proud of who they are, of the heritage they have, their commitment to Islam, and the power they have with the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal. And give it time. Pakistan will be a superpower soon with the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal. But it needs time, dedication, sincerity. So personally, I would say try not to have that happen just to save your kids in the future. Faisal from the UK.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Can you hear me?
Salamullah.
So, Sheikh, I wanted to understand something a little bit about rizq in general, and it's just it's in my head. So, if someone is their rizq is reduced, right, because of their sin, because I heard that sinning sometimes reduces your rizq, and then I heard that rizq is also decreed, so it's in the qadar. So, by doing my question, I'll get to it quickly. So does that mean reducing it was also part of the qadar?
Yes.
And if someone does ibadah and ibadah increases your rizq,
Yes.
that was all part of the qadar?
Yes.
And then if someone is in a country where the country isn't, let's just say there's a war going on, is that because of their sin?
Akhi, this is more than one question. So for your questions, the previous questions, the answer is yes. Your qadar states that your rizq is 100K. Do you know that? No. But I sinned, Sheikh. Okay. It may have decreased, but it is also mentioned in the qadar, the divine decree, that your rizq is 100K. If you were to sin, it will go down to 50K. But you don't know that. And this is something in Allah's hands. What should I do? Quit sinning, do good deeds, ask Allah Azza wa Jal for barakah and blessing in your rizq, and you'll be fine, inshallah.